Joining me on the podcast today is Dr Hayley Dickinson. She is the founder of an Australian-based snack company called Eat For You, and it is Australia's only nutrient-tested, batch-tested food product. And I'll get her to explain exactly what that means in the episode. She has a background in science with a Bachelor of Science, did her honours, and also a background in research, doing her PhD in reproductive stress during pregnancy and how it impacts on the baby. Now, I talk a lot about the grey area that is food labelling and the nutrition information panel, and like to equip my athletes with understanding what on earth they mean and what you're looking at. And one of the reasons also why I don't find tracking calories that useful. But it's nice to hear from a different perspective from the doc, from someone who is all over the research in this space and food labelling laws in Australia. And this, honestly, you'll know really quickly that this is her happy place. She's a fast talker. She's very passionate about changing our entire food landscape globally. So strap yourself in and let's dive into food as we know it with the doc. Welcome to the Triathlon Nutrition Academy podcast, the show designed to serve you up evidence-based sports nutrition advice from the experts. Hi, I'm your host, Taryn, accredited practicing dietitian, advanced sports dietitian, and founder of Dietitian Approved. Listen as I break down the latest evidence to give you practical, easy-to-digest strategies to train hard, recover faster, and perform at your best. You have so much potential, and I want to help you unlock that with the power of nutrition. Let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Hayley.
Woohoo! Hey mate, how you going?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to talk with you today, even just for my own knowledge and benefit. Feel like we should have caught up for a coffee first, but I think I've found somebody that rivals, potentially even beats my absolute love of food and science and is more of a food nerd than me. What do you reckon?
That's a massive call, mate. You are fairly extreme in the nerd end of town.
Oh, thanks.
I don't know, mate, but I do love it. I do love it a fair bit.
Yeah, so you've done the same sort of degree as me, a Bachelor of Science. Mine was specifically in nutrition and dietetics, and you've gone further in the nerd space and done a PhD. But what I wanted to get you on today to talk about and really dive into is the nutrition information panel, because you're somebody that is as passionate about educating people at how to read these things and what they actually mean, potentially more than me.
Look, I do love a nip, but, that was not my research. That was not my background. I did a Bachelor of Science and that was just a straight bachelor. And I did that because I did not know what I wanted to do. And my parents were like, well, you've got to do something. We didn't just send you to school for all of these years to have you just, pick up a trade, which is actually probably fundamentally what I really wanted to do. Anyway, so I did science and I fell in love with physiology. So it took me a couple of years to really find my feet over there. But then, I did. I did an honours degree in reproductive physiology and then I did do my PhD. So you're right, I did spend a lot of time there nerding out at Monash. I did that for a long time. After I finished my PhD, I was there for about 15 years. I ran a lab in pregnancy and women's health and, we were really looking at trying to optimise that pregnancy environment. But I don't need to tell the sad story, but I left academia, ghosted my academic career, and then I just fell in love with food. And one of the things I think that I got to food was because we were working in pregnancy and, as a researcher, you kind of end up getting right down into the niche, right, into the nitty-gritty of individual proteins or whatever. And I was like, this just doesn't feel right. This just doesn't feel enough. Because if we don't know what people are eating and if people aren't eating those fundamental things that we know they need to get in to optimise their health, it doesn't matter what we do in that pregnancy environment because the foundation just isn't there. So I started to ask more and more questions about food. And then I don't know why I did it. I thought, you know what, I'm going to start a food company.
Just because you didn't have enough going on.
It's wild, really. I still look back and go, why did you do that? You could have done so many other things. But I think I've always been that kind of guy who says, well, I don't know enough about that, so I'm going to jump in there and see what I can learn. And when I get in there, you learn some stuff that can be a little bit scary. And I think that's one of the things about the nutrition information panel for me is that it's not what it's touting to be. I mean, presumably as a dietitian, you rely on that and you get your clients to look at it and go, these are this is the protein you're going to get from that, the energy you're going to get from that. It might shock you to know that rarely is the nutrition information panel actually reflective of the food in the packet. Probably doesn't shock you, mate, but it might shock others. No.
It doesn't shock me. Also, probably doesn't shock the listeners if they've been listening for a while, because I do talk about that variation and why I don't think counting calories is that useful, because what's on the label could be 20% either direction on what's actually in the packet. So that is why you're here, so we can nerd up and talk about that and get a bit more practical too, so that people can actually understand that, because counting calories and thinking that what you put in your mouth is exactly what it says is very much a grey zone. So you went from academia, got burnt out, got so sick of all that sort of thing, and you started a food company, and you're the founder of Eat For You, which is the only batch-tested snack company here in Australia. So please tell me what on earth that means and why you're so passionate about batch testing products.
You know, it's one of those things that I wish we weren't. I wish we weren't the only batch nutrient tested snack company, but for now we are, and no one has challenged me on that claim. And I look forward to the day when someone says, hey, actually, you're not the only one, we're doing it too, because that will be an absolute celebration day for me. But we did. So I started Eat For You. It actually started as Eat For Baby, and I really wanted to make food that was of a known nutrient content and quality for women on their pregnancy journey. That was a difficult brand to sell. A lot of people tended to think that we were selling baby food. So we pretty quickly pivoted to Eat For You. The food was not specific to the pregnancy environment. It was just that there were things about the food that were really important to me for that sort of stage of life where there are, you know, there's an increase in nutrient requirement during that period. And then there's also this sort of extra vulnerability. And it's one of those things that we don't really have a great understanding on either, kind of what's going on with your maternal immune system, right? Like it's changed because it's receiving a partially foreign body. But to say that it's compromised or deficient, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that would be a really dangerous evolutionary play to make a woman who's, you know, trying to grow the population more vulnerable to things. So it's just a different environment. And so, of course, with food, you know, you want to be extra careful with things like listeria and salmonella and E. coli and stuff like that. So when we were developing Eat For Baby, Eat For You, we introduced those things as standard for us. So every single batch of our food is tested first, obviously, in the recipe development stage to kind of know that we're getting the sorts of nutrients that we hope and expect to be providing in our food. And if we're not, that's when we then start to do a little dance around who our ingredient suppliers are, and we start to have a better, more direct conversation with them and find people who are really honouring the nutrient integrity of their soil, because that's essentially how it ends up in our food. If the soil is deficient, you're never going to get it in your food. And then once we're happy with the ingredient source that we've got, then we'll do a batch test. And so every single time we make our food, we retest the nutrition information panel, and we do that bacteria and sort of microorganism test every time too. And there are things that everybody has to do, and I feel reasonably confident that most food producers do those things, but it's actually rarely in the actual food that you're required to test for the microorganisms. It's actually just in your manufacturing site where you've got to do, you know, bench tests and stuff like that. So for me, I just wanted a little bit more. I wanted to feel really confident that if I was recommending this stuff to people, that they were going to be safe consuming it.
I really resonate with your overachiever, high achiever mentality to make the best snack food in the world. I love it.
That's what people deserve, right? That's what everyone should be getting from their food. I feel like what I'm offering is actually nothing extraordinary. It should just be the baseline. It should be what all of our food is, but it's just not the reality.
Yeah, so talk to me about how a nutrition information panel is actually developed, because that'll help answer those questions around why you are so passionate about doing that for every single batch.
So there's the energy, protein, sugars, fats, sodium. You need to provide the per serve quantity of those things and the per 100 gram or 100 ml serve. But there are actually databases of food products that food producers can access. And so basically what food producers do is just punch in the ingredients that are in their recipe and the amounts, and then these databases will just drop out a standard nutrition information panel. And that is the requirement. That is okay. That falls within the food standards guidelines. To my mind, that just stinks of a lack of integrity, because there are so many things that impact the nutrients in our food. Time from harvest to getting to the manufacturer, processing, all of that kind of stuff. So it just did not feel honourable to me to use that, to rely on that. So we obviously, that's where we go first, because, you know, we don't always know what the expected nutrient content of all of our foods is. So we go there first and get a bit of a rough idea, tweak our recipe to kind of go, we actually want more vitamin E in that product, so let's push up our sunflower seeds, that sort of thing. But then what you actually see on our packaging is something that comes from our recipe development phase, because one of the tricky things with packaging, obviously, is that you print your packaging before you make your food. So I understand the challenge for food producers in having a nutrition information panel that accurately reflects the food in your packet. But we've overcome that because there's a beautiful little QR code on our packet. So when you scan that QR code, it takes you to my website and it tells you exactly what the nutrition information panel is for the exact product that is sitting in that wrapper. And we go well beyond what you have to have. So, I listed like 8 things that have to be on the nip, but we include minerals and vitamins and stuff as well. Not all of them, because not all foods have all of the minerals and vitamins, but those ones where we would expect for you to get a reasonable amount from the ingredients that we've used, they get tested as well.
It's so exciting. How good is technology? It would be so good if every food that had that available, and maybe one day it will. You are the person paving the way for that sort of stuff, but I think it's very important to understand that what is on a label is not necessarily what's in a product unless you are batch testing every single food. So can you explain to me how you actually do that? So you make a new batch of bars. How do you test the nutrient quality or quantity of that batch?
So we send it away. So we get independent labs to do that analysis for us, and there are several different companies that offer that. We just choose one that's reliable, basically, and we get great data back. And, I can't control it, right? Once I've made that batch of food, I'm in.
Yeah.
Unless there is a microorganism issue, which obviously is a no-brainer. You don't sell food that's not safe. But from a nutrition perspective, I'm not going to pull a product line because I didn't hit my selenium target, for example. But I'm definitely going to tell you the truth. I'm definitely going to tell you that despite there being enough Brazil nuts in here to theoretically give you your daily selenium requirement, we didn't get there this time. I try to mitigate that, and that actually hasn't happened to us yet because we do that early testing as well, just to make sure that the ingredients have got it. But it takes us about 2 weeks from production to getting those results. So there's that hold time where we sort of have a batch ready to go, but we can't go. And one of the things that we really notice, the macros don't shift that much for us so far, but we do sometimes see a shift in the protein-carb ratio. So, our carbs will come down, our protein will go up, and vice versa. But where I do see a fair amount of change is in the mineral composition, and one that I talk a lot about because it's literally been an example where we've had none to the full recommended daily intake of is selenium, which many of us are told to get it from your Brazil nuts, and that's what we used in our product, in our Hero Bar. But when we were sampling Brazil nuts to try and find the best one, some of them had none,
crazy,
but basically undetectable levels of selenium. And even though they did have some, the recommendations 2 per day to meet your daily selenium needs, some of them you needed to eat 21.
Holy crap.
To hit your daily selenium target. And that's a lot. And Brazil nuts actually aren't that delicious a nut. They're quite bitter.
Yeah.
So eating 21's a lot. But this is where I think what we're talking about is really important, because if you were to eat 21 Brazil nuts where the selenium content was high, like the Brazil nuts I ended up using, then you'd be reaching the upper limit of safety of selenium. And so this is where not really knowing the nutrient content of our food, it's super fun, but it's also actually critical for optimization of human health that we know this stuff. Because, iron is another great example where for some people, too much iron is incredibly dangerous for them, right? So they need to know, right? They absolutely need to know that if they're eating a food that's containing iron, they need to know how much is there. And so, selenium is another one of those. There's that safe upper limit for a reason. That's the game. For me, at the moment, it's about making sure you get enough, because what I am finding is that you're more likely to get foods with lower levels than you are with high levels. And I think there's a much bigger conversation in that. That's what's going on in our farming, what's going on in our soils, what's going on in our processing that is sucking the nutrients out of our food.
It's almost a bit overwhelming, isn't it? How do we know what on earth we're putting in our mouths then? What's the next step for us to understand if we're meeting our requirements on a day-to-day basis, or if there's anything that we could be doing or should be doing? Because we're talking to triathletes here and everyone wants to be perfect and do all the things right. If we can't trust a nutrition information panel, why would we track our calories? And then how do we know if we're getting all the nutrients we need on a day-to-day basis?
We don't. We truly don't. It's a devastating reality, and it's one that we don't talk about very often. We'll sit there and say these are the foods that you should be eating, but the reality is we actually don't know whether you're getting what you should be getting. There's very little science out there around nutrient content of our food, and most of it is not coming from independent people. Most of it is coming from organisations or people who have a vested interest in you eating a particular food or from a particular farming type. Probably the simplest thing to do is grow what you can, because then, you essentially get to control that environment. And I know that's not a reality for lots of people, but it's not hard to stick some leafy green seeds in a pot of soil. Just about anyone can grow leafy greens.
I don't know if I can.
It's a risk. Even you could.
I can grow herbs successfully as long as I keep on top of the water in summer, and that is about it, to be honest. We've got too many possums that eat it all.
Herbs are a good start.
Yeah.
But it is a much bigger conversation, and the reality is it's not for the day-to-day punter to get on top of this, because that's my end game, right? That's the utopia for me, where everyone is living on the land in these beautiful, rich, urban garden spreads, right, where we're sharing amongst our community, we're growing the food, we can see where it's being grown, we know the person who's growing it, and I know that that's where I'll end up. That is my end game, but I know that's not a reality for everybody else. So we need to talk about it. We need to have the conversations that you and I are having right now. We need to back brands that are being brave enough to ask the question. Like, it scares the shit out of me every time we run a batch nutrient test, because whilst there's that hope and I've done all of the due diligence I could along the way, there is still the reality that I might get a result that says that there is basically nothing other than the macros in my product. But we have to be brave enough to do that, because that's the only way that we're going to go, holy shit, the ingredients that we are accessing, they don't have the nutrients in them. Then it's a bigger conversation. And look, I think our farming is a little bit upside down. We use certified organic ingredients, and that's mostly from a what's not in it perspective rather than a what is in it perspective. But, there's some beautiful new agriculture practices like regenerative agriculture where it's really about rebuilding the soil. I think we've just treated the land a bit shit for probably too long.
Yep.
And it can be pretty straightforward, I think. My brother, he's the king of compost, right? So everything is about just putting trimmings, food scraps back in the soil. That's literally all it is. It's a really simple process. And then you get the microbial richness coming back into the soil, and then that's what moves the minerals and things into the food. We often think the soil is deficient in the mineral, but it's often more the case that the soil is deficient in the microbes that are required to transport those things up into the plant and get it into their fruit and seeds and whatnot. So it is a bigger conversation, and I feel a bit shit actually sometimes doing what we're doing, because I'm like, I actually don't have a solution for you. I've identified a ginormous problem, but how do we solve it? And the scariest thing for me is that the tendency towards solving is stick a synthetic supplement in there.
That was my next question for you. You jumped the gun. So I was going to play devil's advocate a little bit, because I can really hear your passion and your drive, and you are but one person, but it needs to be a global shift. And so there will be people listening that are like, well, if the food I'm eating is deficient, should I just take a multivitamin? And so what's the doc's opinion on that?
Breaks my heart. But I can see why you would go that way. It makes total sense to go that way, because a supplement is a known quantity, right? But that's what we say about our food. It's real food with the nutritional reliability of a supplement. And it's not hard to do what I'm doing. It's scary, but it is not difficult, right? I literally, as the batch is being made, we pull out bars across the run. So obviously I don't just want to measure the quantity in my bars at the start of my run or my end. I want to do it across the run. So bars are randomly taken across the run and then sent off to the labs, and they're put together, and, they do all of their beautiful work to pull out those individual vitamins and minerals. There is nothing stopping any other brand from doing that.
What is the cost to do that?
Actually doesn't cost me that much money. It costs me a lot of money when my batches are small, obviously. So it's about between $1,000 and $2,000 per run, depending on what I'm testing. Vitamins are very expensive to test. Minerals, not so much. And the standard nip is really not a lot of money, about $250 to run a nip, but that stops at sodium, so that doesn't give you all the other things.
Yeah.
I don't know why more brands aren't doing it. And I speak to other people in business about this, and they say, look, at the end of the day, it's a dollars and cents game each. And if they can save 25 cents on a product, they're going to save 25 cents on a product, because people don't give a shit. I beg to differ. I think people do give a shit. I don't think they know what to do. I don't think they know what to do about it. So I would love to see more brands go, you know what, yeah, we're going to do this. And it could look pretty ugly for us at the beginning, but we've got to back those brands, because without the information, without knowing that that's happening, then we're just swimming our way towards a really deficient nutritional environment. And imagine the legacy we're leaving our small people. The nutritional quality of our food is diminishing. I see it. I see the data. So, I mean, that's why I'm here, right? Because I have an 11-year-old and I'll be damned if she has to rely on synthetic supplements to get the nutrients she needs, right? And so when we first started making bars, that was the offer on the table from a lot of the manufacturing partners that we spoke with. They're like, let us know your nutritional targets and we'll just throw in X, Y, and Z to get you there. And I remember going,
what?
Huh?
You're crazy.
I was like, no, we'll do it with food. And they're like, well, I was like, if I cannot make food that is nutritious, then I'm in the wrong place and I've got to take a step back and I've got to go back and I've got to go towards the soil. I've got to spend more time there because we've got to fix it somehow. I don't know why I choose to take on.
I'm getting a bit stressed listening to all this because there's such a big problem and like, how do we fix it? It's a completely global change. And we started talking about the nutrition information panel.
That's the sort of the reveal point, right? But if we're not updating our NIPs, then we're kind of just hiding behind old data, right? So we've got to get fresh data. But there are people doing awesome things, like the Farmers Footprint. I don't know if you follow them. Blair Beattie is kind of their director here in Australia, but they're a global movement and it's all about giving farmers support to get more nutrients back in their soil. I mean, we just keep blaming the farmers, right? You've been using pesticides for too long. You've been monocropping for too long. Just all of these things, right? You're just chasing the dollar, whichever crops are going to give you the most money, blah, blah, blah. I think that's horseshit. I think they're just doing the best they can and
literally,
trying to, literally, and just support their families, right, and keep their businesses going. So they 100% need our support to completely change the way they're doing farming. But that's how it has to happen. And there is that grassroots program happening, and it's beautiful. And so we're deeply connected in with Farmers Footprint now, and we're kind of moving towards having those conversations with other brands and say, let's do this. Let's just get on board. Let's back each other as we start asking the scary as heck questions. But then we start partnering with farmers who are producing ingredients that are rich in nutrients, because that's all that has to happen. We just need to be getting ingredients from where the nutrients are in the soil. I mean, I've got Brazil nuts, like there's about 2 in our bar, and you get 114% of your daily requirement of selenium. So that's perfect, right? That's a beautiful thing. You don't need to take a selenium supplement. That bar has got it and I've tested it. So we just need more and more of those things. I believe we can change it. I believe I'm having the conversations with the other people who believe in it enough that we can and that we will. Maybe not for us, but for our smalls, for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, I think so. But synthetic supplements scares the pants off me. Aside from the fact that they don't necessarily behave the same way as the food source of that vitamin or mineral, we just don't understand enough about them, and food gives us so much more than just the macros and the vitamins and the minerals, things that we just don't understand. I think that if we are relying on those, I think it will be incomplete, and I reckon we'll start to really struggle.
Yeah, we don't really know, do we? How long have we been using multivitamins for? Not forever.
Not forever.
Not forever. And I know that there'll be people listening going, this is just like so overwhelming, I'm just going to take a multi and be done with it because I need all the things that I need. But if we don't actually know that what you're getting is what you're getting, and then your body does with it what it should do to convert it to its active form or whatever it is that you need to get from that. Plus, like you mentioned, all the phytochemicals and things that are in food and those other interactions that we just don't even know about yet. I'm very passionate about food first, and I believe really strongly, like you, that we can get everything that we need from food. We don't have to take pills and potions to get there. But we need more people like you, Doc, shaping the way that we think about food, but also test food. But I think it's really important for people to understand that what's on the nutrition information panel is not necessarily what's in a food, which I do talk about a lot, because a lot of people do count calories and track those sorts of things and want to check things like iron, but we just don't know. And so it's great to see somebody that is creating a product that is unknown value so that we can get everything that we need. We just need more of you. Can we clone you into like 600,000 people?
Just need a few more brands, mate. We just need a few more brands doing it. It's not that hard. And, and what I would love to see is it happen before me. Ideally, this nutrient analysis happens at the very beginning, so at harvest.
Yeah.
We start to get much braver about things, and we go, right, we're going to measure at harvest, we're going to measure at the point that we normally, because a lot of our food is stored, love it or hate it, it's the reality. So let's measure at harvest, let's measure at the point where it comes out of storage and then gets sold to consumers. What do we lose in that processing time? Because that's the reality. It doesn't really matter if it's a harvest, because if you are not eating it for 6 months, then it's going to definitely have changed. And that's one of the other things we play around is we'll do it at another analysis at 6 months and another analysis at 12 months of being in the packet, just to kind of get a feel for how things are looking. And things hold up pretty well. Vitamins are the only thing that sort of slides because, of course, they're much more vulnerable than minerals. Minerals are just kind of sitting there, not doing very much.
The water-soluble in particular over the fat-soluble vitamins?
Yep. It's interesting, actually. We don't get a lot of water-soluble vitamins in our products. Most of them are fat-soluble, so we get pretty good vitamin E. I would love to get more water-soluble vitamins, but they just don't. I mean, they're not really in the ingredients that I'm using, actually. There's not a lot of water left in what we're using, dried fruit, nuts and seeds. So it's mostly, we're a really nice source of fats. Reasonable source of protein too, actually. I have a question. Am I allowed to ask you a question?
Well, it depends. Yes, go for it.
Not too scary, I don't think. So our bars are like a 200-calorie bar, right? So they're 50 grams, about 200 calories in there. And, and there's about 4 to 8 grams of protein in each bar. There's a heap of dietary fibre. You get about 30% of your daily fibre. And then, magnesium and phosphorus and those sorts of things are pretty consistent across all of our bars. When would you recommend people eat them? Because you talk to athletes, right? So what does a snack like that fit into someone's regiment?
As a triathlete, I guess it's different to the general population. Probably too much fibre to have during training, I would suggest.
That's going to get things moving.
Yeah, and it probably is a snack that you'd chuck in between meals, to be honest, is probably the best place for it. Okay, so some really practical tips or suggestions for people then that are feeling a little bit overwhelmed with all the things. What can they do to maximise how much nutrients they're eating?
The reality is you're still going to get maximum bang for your buck nutritionally from eating real whole food. So, meat, eggs, fruit, veggies, that's still going to be the stuff that's packed with nutrients. Typically, processed packaged food is going to be absent in nutrient. It might have a pretty attractive nutrition information panel, and what we haven't talked about is calories versus calories from whole food versus parts and pieces of food. So that number doesn't really mean anything to someone like me when, it's a rice malt syrup or whatever. That's not a food. That once was rice that has just been cooked down to a horribly sweet syrup. So if you're eating real food, you're definitely going to be far more nutritionally optimized than if you're relying on stuff that comes out of a laboratory or a, heavily, intensely machined manufacturing facility. If we want to talk about supplements, I love the idea of whole food supplements, and there are a few brands out there that are doing more and more of that. I still struggle, though, because they're not batch testing. So It sounds fabulous. It sounds like the dream, because you're using the versions of vitamins and minerals that are coming from the food, but there's still processing. You've still turned a kilo of kale into a green powder.
Yep.
And what does that look like? What do you lose in that process? I think the same needs to be said for food as it does for those whole food supplements. You've really got to get in there and do the testing.
Couldn't have said that better myself. Like, very much whole foods, real foods, keep away from packets as much as possible unless you are independently batch testing all the nutrients in your product like Doc is. And just to highlight on that point, those greens powders and stuff sound awesome and they get marketed really well, but we honestly have no idea what's in that finished product. So I do talk about that a little bit. I try not to talk about brands because I don't want to get in trouble and get hunted down and have my car burnt. But if you're taking something like that and it's costing you a bucket load, eat some fruits and vegetables instead.
Yep, because you're always going to get so much more from that. And it's more enjoyable.
Totally. But triathletes are time poor and they're busy, and that's an easy Band-Aid fix.
Yeah, sure.
So if someone wants to try some of your bars, the Eat For You bars, where do they do that? How do they go about finding them?
We're in about 350 stores around the country, like organic grocers and health food shops and whatnot, but they could just jump to the website. That's always the funnest for us, because then my phone goes cha-ching.
Dopamine.
Totally. And that's just eatforyou.com.au. And maybe we'll share a little code that you can share with your peeps.
Oh, sure. We'll chuck that in the show notes, or we might actually send it out to our email list only.
I like it.
Is there plans to distribute globally? I feel like you've got enough on your plate, but at the moment you're available Australia, New Zealand. Plans to go global?
I'd love to go global. We did just get a little export marketing development grant from the government to kind of scope that out, because just this week, I don't know if you've seen in the news about Bounce. So they were really one of the first kind of packaged ball products. They've just gone into administration because they sought to go to the US and acquired massive debt in doing so, and it didn't work. So it'll be a slow process for us just because, I'm a conservative person and I do not have a massive pile of money sitting behind me just to burn in this process. So I think the reality for me is to keep it small because there are bigger things that I'm trying to do than just make my brand big and just sell billions of my bars. That's actually not what I'm here for. The bars are a vehicle to prove to people and brands that you can do good things with food and you can produce honest, transparent, nutritious food. But yeah, I think I'm a part of a bigger conversation, which is to get that far beyond just the Eat For You snack bars and really get that happening across many, many other foods, because you cannot live on a snack bar. I'd love it if you could, but you can't. I don't give you everything that you need and you'd get really sick of them really quick. So we need more food doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and that's what I love about you. So passionate, and it's not about the money or world domination or anything like that. You're just trying to actually change the world one bar at a time. Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your mind with the listeners. If anyone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Our socials is pretty good. We're pretty active on Instagram, so that's just at Eat For You. I think there's an underscore in there somewhere. Someone has Eat For You all on its own.
Oh, no.
Broke my heart a little bit. Otherwise, my email, hayley@eatforyou.com.au.
It's _eat for you. I'll pop that in the show notes. You don't even know your own Insta handle.
I knew it was somewhere, the start or the end. Ellie will be so pissed at me.
Oh, love it. Thank you, Doc.
Thanks so much, mate.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Triathlon Nutrition Academy podcast. I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or want to share with me what you've learnt, email me at podcast@dietitianapproved.com. You can also spread the word by leaving me a review and taking a screenshot of you listening to the show. Don't forget to tag me on social media at dietitian.approved so I can give you a shout out too. If you want to learn more about what we do, head to dietitianapproved.com. And if you want to learn more about the Triathlon Nutrition Academy program, head to dietitianapproved.com/academy. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to helping you smash it in the fourth leg. Nutrition!